Hello and welcome. My name is Susan and I've been drawing and sharing my daily progress videos with you for the last 3 years. In today's video, I want to do a sketchbook tour, sketchbook walkthrough of this recently completed sketchbook. Now I started this, let's take a look, in April and I finished it October 3rd. So yeah, really excited about my progress in this sketchbook because I would say this sketchbook probably had the most wide range of materials that I've experimented with. And the reason that's the case is just because I think I kind of grew bored of using pencil. And I think you can only experience growth a certain way, and at some point, I just feel there's a plateau and growth is painful. Everybody knows that. I just feel like I couldn't get past that anymore. In this current moment in my life, continuously using one single type of medium to explore in my sketchbook and practice on a routine basis, it has become kind of boring for me. And you know, you may not be like me. I know some people, they just use one type of medium and they stick with it and they become really, really good at it. That's not me. I think sometimes growth is recognizing what makes sense to you and what doesn't. So before I start with the sketchbook tour, like always, I like to first show you the tools that I used. Because I know for a lot of people, as you watch my daily videos, that's something that you're really interested in. And I was able to just find these because what I did, what I foolishly did, is that when the markers ran out of ink, I kind of just tossed them away. So they're in my garbage can. I can't find them anymore. So this is what I have remaining. A lot of the beginning drawings are still my old colored pencils. So I'm not gonna go over what I use because I have plenty of videos on that. So what I've been using and experimenting with a lot recently is just the use of a mixture of, I would say, the Faber-Castell Pitch Artist pen brush. I have basically exhausted all the other colors. The only one I have remaining is white. I've been really liking using these highlighters. Now, I do believe I don't really see a ton of difference between different kinds of highlighters. I like how they're dual tip and I can use either side. They do smudge, as in like you can blend them a little bit. The colors, once you lay it down, it doesn't just stick there. If you use another color on top, you can sort of mix them up and create these interesting layered effects. And then this is the black marker that I'm currently using. Again, pretty much any black marker will do. This is just the one that I'm using right now. It's a brush tip, which I really, really like. This is a really fat brush tip, so you can create a lot of different kinds of brush strokes with it. And then lastly, these are my Tombow water-based brush pens. They're dual tip. I love them. I have lots of colors in these. If you layer them together, you can really move the ink around on the paper and create interesting effects. So you can blend them. And I like to use these lighter shades so that, you know, you can create nice gradient effect for portraits. Let's get into the exciting bit, which is my sketchbook tour. And as I said before, in the very beginning, I just used pencil. I just used the color pencils that I've always been using I've probably been using it for over a year now, and you can't blame me for getting bored of it. But yeah, I think I've been pretty good at finding the right shapes, finding the right values using pencil. These are erasable colored lead that I'm using in a mechanical pencil. I would say I've gotten a lot better over the years at improving my form and capturing the model's facial expressions in these 20-minute daily sketches. So I no longer find it super challenging anymore just doing these 20-minute portrait sketches. I would say most of the time, I still get excited doing these, but I don't feel nearly as satisfied compared to how I was before doing these daily routine sketches. And that's when I feel like I really needed a change. I mean, obviously I still have good and bad days. Sometimes, now that I look back on these drawings, some of these are definitely, like, they're not all equal. So this is when, as you can see, I started experimenting with other things. This was done using 2 different shades of gray of Faber-Castell markers. And unfortunately, I did run out of ink on both of them, so you did not see them in my earlier explanation of the tools I've been using, because I just tossed them away. So here I made some mistakes. So this is what I mean by I started to feel like using these is giving me more challenge, right? Because I'm using markers immediately, and even though I'm using like the lightest shade to sketch first and then going back in with a darker shade, I still find that there's plenty of room for mistake. So here, I think I used a acrylic white marker to just add in the highlight. But ideally, obviously, I want to practice and not make these mistakes and leave these whitest parts as the paper itself. I actually quite like this drawing. I think I capture her quite well. So these are all just different Faber-Castell markers. They're all, I think these were all done with just 2, a lighter and the darker. And this one I probably made 2, like it just doesn't look very good. So I went back in with another black marker. But I'm definitely struggling. So as I started using these brush pens, I started to struggle a lot with capturing the form right away using a pen without a pencil. So that's been a big challenge that I started to kind of like, it's self-imposed challenge, right? But I think it's necessary when you're trying to look for growth. You gotta just create these challenges for yourself. And you can clearly tell that, you know, I'm having challenges here, capturing the right form on her face. And I went back in repeatedly because I keep on failing finding the right line there. I mean, even this one, I'm pretty sure her face is tilted upwards a little bit and the jaw should be a little bit bigger because there's like perspective, right? So this is definitely wrong. It just doesn't look as wrong because, you know, I think yeah, there are definitely improvements that I could have done. This is, again, mistake. Just, this is probably one of the worst spreads, but this is what growth looks like. This is what happens when you try to challenge yourself and you're looking at yourself failing. This one's much better, I would say. So now I think I started using maybe 2 or 3 different shades of gray here. That's one. Yeah, that's definitely 3 different kinds of grays that I'm using. I think I used 3 different kinds of gray here as well. I quite like this one. I think I capture her facial expression really well. I really like this one too, just because of the gradient and the way I capture her hair. I feel like there's certain movement. Even though she's not moving per se, I feel like her hair had movement. Her hair had this livelihood to it, and I feel like I captured that really well. And here I like how I capture her gaze. Here I made a mistake around her nose, made it a lot rounder and bigger, so it would have been a lot nicer if that is not there, if I, yeah. But what can you say? It is what it is. This one, I think the form is incorrect. But again, I really like the way I capture her gaze over here. They had relatively similar gaze. I put them side by side. In terms of the form, I definitely could have improved capturing the jawline a little bit better. I think both of them are slightly off. Her eyes, I think this one should have been, or maybe this one should have been a little bit smaller. Yeah, especially the pupil here. You know, if I look at this one, right, my first critique would have been I should have made it bigger, both of them. But that's one of the challenges, I think, when you are using pen drawing. As soon as you started putting down the form and creating these searching lines, and if they're just a little bit off, you're kind of stuck with it. It's very hard to make it bigger after you put down the boundaries, initial boundaries. And the thing that I had to do is I wanted to make sure that this spread looks balanced. So when I started creating this drawing, I made it also a little bit smaller. Here, I believe I made a little bit, try to fix my mistakes by adding in a little bit of white. It's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, again, this one, I would have liked it for it to be a little bit bigger. The forehead now is a lot bigger than it should be. I think I continue to have challenge with these side portraits when I'm using a brush pen. Again, it's harder to correct your mistake once you put it down. The neck here is a little bit too wide. It would have been probably more correct if this gets cinched in a little bit. But using the brush pens have really helped me with building confidence, because I don't really have the luxury to go back in and erase things. I really have to carefully observe and then put it down on paper. And it just trains my coordination between like my eyes and my brain and my pen, like my hand. This is like really bad. This chin is really awful. It's not supposed to be looking like that at all. Same with here. I think this needs to go in, right? That doesn't look right. Including this jaw. Probably should have been more like that. This one is better. I really like this one. I think I captured her really well. I also recall one of the critiques I had on these drawings when I started using these brush pens is that people say I make everyone look like they're black, which I don't think is the case. I mean, I think just through capturing the way that the facial structure is, you can tell what, you know, their ethnicity. I think it's pretty obvious that these two are Asian men. No? Well, let me know in comments if you agree or disagree. So Again, I think I made her hair overly exaggerated here, and this should be going back a little bit more. This looks kind of off. So here I think I'm using 3 different kinds of grays now. This is more of a warm tone gray, and this is more, I think that's a cool gray. I think this is when I started to run out of ink on some of these Faber-Castell markers, so I had to be a little bit more flexible with what the choice of markers I can choose. I just didn't really want to go out and get the same shade, so I just work with what I have. This would have been better if I had like a lighter gray, but I struggled so hard with this portrait. I think he had like this strong sunshine hitting his face on half of his face, and then the other half is quite dark. And I had a lot of challenge with trying to figure out how to capture his facial expression, and then this is what I came up with, and it sucked. It's probably the worst drawing in this whole sketchbook. And this one isn't even that much better. So honestly, I think just working with pens in general, you have to learn to accept that you're gonna have bad drawings, and you're gonna have like these cringe-worthy moments looking back on these drawings, thinking that, what were you thinking? Again, the forehead is too large here, and there's too much space between her eyes. This one's better, but the position of her eye is wrong. I think he's an actor, but I'm not too sure. This one, the chin, this jawline is wrong. Should have been probably more like that, maybe. This one, I did not capture the model at all. I think if I look back at the reference photo, I would realize that this doesn't even look like the reference model. I just, again, having a bad day, or, just having a bad moment in this session, and neither of these two are really capture the essence of the reference photo. This is a lot better. I think for this one, both of them resembled the reference photo more, and overall I just think it's a better drawing as well. This is when I started using this black marker, and you know why I can tell? It's because I started making these smudges, because I have the habit of opening this and then put it at the back. Little did I know, because of how fat this tip is, it leaves residual ink in this cap, and then when I put it at the back, I ended up smudging the ink everywhere, and it took me way too long to figure that out. So you'll see these smudges pretty much everywhere. This was bad and bad. Both of them were really poorly captured. But you know what? Like, this is when I think I experienced the most growth, even though I'm starting to have really poorly captured portraits. I do feel like I'm forcing myself to become better at identifying the shapes on the reference photos' faces and figuring out where the highlights are and leaving them. I think this is I've used this reference photo multiple times, and I think this is a much better drawing than before. This one isn't as good. So the pupil in this eye and this eye don't line up. So this pupil should have been shifted to left a little bit more. Again, these things, I think had I drawn using a pencil, I would have just went back in and corrected it. But because I'm using pen, there's like really no take backsies. So you're forced to recognize these and be correct about it the next time you put down the ink on paper. This one, again, I always struggle with the left hand side. Yeah, this is wrong, right? I think this needs to go in a little bit. So this pupil needs to go in a little bit as well. This one's better, right? So even though this is a very similar pose, right? This is much better. This line is captured more correctly. But over here, I think, again, it's kind of wrong. This mouth should probably be moved to left a little bit. Just the whole thing looks a little bit awkward. I quite like this. I like both of these two drawings. The only thing I don't like are these smudges. But if I don't have these smudges and I don't have this initial searching line that's kind of awkward, I would say this is quite a nice drawing. I really like how I applied the thinness here and then the thickness here, and how I applied these strokes. And this one is not bad either. I would say the way I drew his hair was not as nice as when I did hers. I like her hair better than how I did it here. This is when I started introducing this marker. This is the light blue color that you're seeing, kind of peeking through. So I'm starting to get a lot better at capturing this side. You see, I purposefully start to practice these kind of like lightly tilted heads, and I'm getting better at it. I would have preferred definitely using a thinner line here, but I think it's because this side was actually lighter and this side was darker. But still, I think it looks a lot better if I don't have a harsh line. This is actually not a good drawing, but I think I made a tutorial on this one, or at least that there's a long form of it for both of them. But I don't actually like this drawing. This one I think is a little slightly better, but even that, I think this one could have been improved. I think sometimes when I record those long form videos, the setup is slightly different and I actually perform worse than when I just do my routine drawings. I don't know what happened here. That's just awkward. It looks like there are little bugs. I don't know. Or like he just got a haircut and the hair fell on his face. That's terrible. Oh, this is probably one of my favorite spreads in the sketchbook. I really like how effortless these two drawings looked, and I like the size. I like how large they are on the page. There were some incorrect searching lines here and there, but I think you know, it's not too obvious than this one. But yeah, I like the facial expression. I like the energy. Overall, I quite like this spread. This is when I started introducing, where's the other marker? This one as the lightest shade. again, you can see I'm running out of ink on those Faber-Castell pens, and shortly after, I think I ran out of ink altogether on all of the Faber-Castell pens, and that's when I started searching for alternatives, which are my highlighters. This was such a bad drawing too. I think I added this blue marker to cover up the background because I made too many mistakes, especially in this one. Yeah, so this is when I started using highlighters, and I started using highlighters, and I noticed that if I put in the black marker and then I go back in with highlighter again, then it actually smudges the black ink. So then I started to just do highlighters first and then use the black marker last. And it kind of creates this illustration style. So these look a little bit more like illustrations. You can see they're quite flat. There's virtually zero shading, right? Because you couldn't really do shading at that point. The black marker is just the last thing applied onto them. So this is a different style, I would say, altogether. This is a much better drawing compared to this one. This one is just wrong, the proportion. And here is when I started introducing another highlighter, and I actually quite like layering these two highlighters together because I realized that when I do this, I can actually create some shading, because when I put these two colors together, it creates a nice shadow. Or I can use them separately. So it's more obvious here, right? So you have the pink, you have the blue on its own, and then when you apply them together, you kind of get this purple color. So this is when I started experimenting with gradient using highlighters, and I quite like it. And I also really like how the highlighters give a lot of energy and saturation. It makes certain parts or certain drawings have this unique property to feel it's really highly energetic, even though, they just have this almost like stoic gaze. Yeah, this one I think is quite interesting. She's, she has this quite charged facial expression, and coloring the whole thing, this pink color is really making her even more angry than before, I would say. And then when you layer in these freckles using these highlighters, it makes it look almost fairy-like. I think I also quite like creating these shapes, these geometric shapes using the highlighters, the thick end. I think it kind of creates this masculine feeling because of how sharp it abruptly ends. I started to experiment with just using different tips and creating different shapes. This is when I started to notice that the black marker is really running out of ink. I've been trying to squeeze the last drop of ink out and make it work. Oh yeah, the pink is running out of ink, so I started to use this orange color. And that's pretty much it. This is the last page of the sketchbook, and I quite like my progression of how I came to experiment with just a wide range of colors and mediums. I'm forced to draw a certain way because of the way the markers are. And those constraints actually help me, I would say, grow as an artist. For instance, how I'm forced to use a black marker last here and create this almost illustration style. Or when, when the marker is really running out of ink and I'm able to create these subtle gradients using the black marker. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do that. I think there are just like some are happy accidents and some are just, like for example, here, I'm just using grays and I kind of like how it's a low contrast spread. You know what I mean? It's quite low contrast because there's nothing that's super dark. And it makes the face quite soft looking. And it's just, there's a moment of you work with what you got when you're working with brush pens, and there are just happy moments, and sometimes it's unpleasant moment, like when I get smudges. But I think overall, when you have certain constraints, you learn to improve, you learn to work with what you got, and you try to become a better version of yourself through the journey. And it's never perfect, right? Sometimes you have these bad spreads and it's wrong, but you just want to finish it and get over it and get to the next drawing as soon as possible. But sometimes you have these drawings where, it just comes together so effortlessly. I quite like this drawing. So yeah, I don't know when I'm gonna go back to drawing with pencil again. Again, there's nothing wrong with these. I still quite enjoy drawing with pencil. I just think I'm having so much fun with drawing with pen, and especially brush pen, that I don't think I'm gonna go back anytime soon. I really like using these Tombow brush pens, and I also really enjoy using the black markers that have a brushed pen tip. And the highlighters are interesting too. I might just experiment with more highlighters. If you have any recommendation, please do let me know, because I'm such a big fan of brush pens. I think if there are really interesting brush pens, please do let me know in comments below. Thank you and happy drawing.